All right, so my name is Karl Groves. I am Chief Innovation Officer at a company just down the street called Level Access. This talk is called All Sizzle, No Steak. Before I get started though, I do want to thank the conference for having me, thank the conference for having accessibility talks, thank the 3 prior speakers for talking or at least mentioning accessibility. That is awesome, so thank you. So my name is Karl Groves, like you see there, and like I've already said once before. Anybody here visually impaired? Okay. I'm going to describe some of my slides. That's why I asked that, because sometimes I'll describe the visuals on my slides. So I founded a company in 2014 called Tenon. Tenon was the very first API-first accessibility testing tool. It was the very first SaaS-based accessibility testing tool. It was the very first one with a Node module, first one with a Gulp module, Grunt plugin, WordPress plugin for OpenScholar, plugin for Drupal. We were the first of all of those things. And then 2021, we were bought by Level Access, and I've subsequently bought myself a big yacht and all that good stuff. One thing I did learn, as a matter of fact, so Casey, during the lunch break, came around and gave everybody their bubbles, and he said he's heard money can't buy happiness, and I was going to argue with that, but then he followed up with saying, but he can buy bubbles, and I actually completely agree with that. So money can buy bubbles, and bubbles are equivalent to happiness, in my opinion. Really quickly, we are hiring at Level Access. We have a bunch of jobs. If anybody's looking, you want to go to that QR code. If you don't know how to use a QR code, you're not hired. One really cool job opening we have right now is for a data analyst. So Level Access now is the largest accessibility company on the planet. We have over 500 employees, which means that we have a lot of work to do, a lot of people to do the work. And one of the things that we're doing is gathering accessibility data at scale. So in the R&D department, we have an opening for a data analyst. If anybody is really, really good with that kind of stuff, then go for it. So now I want to talk about accessibility. So right now we are faced with the perfect storm, so to speak. The perfect storm is that the web is inaccessible. So basically, if you are a person with a disability using the web is kind of a mixed bag. A lot of the very large companies that are out there are very well attuned to accessibility. So pretty much all the biggest, say, Fortune 500 companies, they've got their stuff together. But for the most part, everything else is kind of a shit show. On average, the average web page has between 40 and 70 accessibility errors of some kind. And by volume, most of those have to do with color contrast and missing alt text. Y'all know about alt text, right? You know how to add alt text. Why the hell do people do that so wrong? I don't know. But anyway, and so what's interesting about this is that there is also a lot of lawsuits around accessibility. So back in October 2014, a law firm named Carlson and Lynch up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, started firing off demand letters saying, we are going to sue you unless you pay us a lot of money to settle. Now, they weren't the first people to ever sue anybody, but they were the first ones to do that at scale. Every single store that you're going to find in your local shopping center or local mall had gotten one of these by Christmas time in 2014. Then what happened was the copycats came out of the woodwork. Like I said, Carlson and Lynch, they were up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They now have trolls in doing the same thing in New York, in Florida, in Texas, and in California as the most major ones that are major states are doing this because of the fact that they're doing judge shopping. Basically, they look for circuit courts that are amenable to these types of lawsuits, and they're going to file en masse at those places. So the price of non-compliance is pretty painful. Some of these ADA trolls will go away for about $4,000. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the lawyer that I had for my company was about $500 an hour. As you can see, simple math says 20 hours of my lawyer's time, and I'm maxed out on whatever this person was going to get out of me anyway. May as well just pay the $4,000. For real lawsuits, for lawsuits with merit, lawsuits with plaintiffs who actually want to make a point out of this whole thing and make you actually fix your website and all that sort of stuff, that cost is much, much, much higher. If you go to my website, karlgroves.com, as a matter of fact, I'll show you what that website looks like. So I have a post here that you might, well, of course I'm not sharing that one. Understanding the cost of not being accessible. So you might want to read that one because it does talk about some of these things, and it actually will give you the cost of not being accessible. And then we'll move forward. So anyway, the price for non-compliance is really painful. If we have this perfect storm, most websites are non-compliant. Most private companies, and as Jordan mentioned, he alluded to, government websites have to be compliant. Most people aren't compliant. The penalty is painful. Wow, what a business opportunity that would be for someone who could possibly make your website accessible quickly, cheaply, and with minimal disruption to your UI. Behold the overlay. So Casey already mentioned, he mentioned the topic overlay. In this instance, what we're talking about are those little widgets you see sometimes on a retail website. It's got the little universal accessibility logo on the bottom right or bottom left. It's a person in a wheelchair. You click on it, a little widget comes up, and it's got a bunch of options on the site, on the UI to make it accessible. This is a screenshot from a company called Accessible. They are currently the second most popular overlay company in the world. They claim that their magical AI accessibility tool can make you accessible and compliant in 24 hours. How long would it take you, by the way, because I said most websites have about 40 to 60 accessibility errors per page. How long would it take you to fix 40 accessibility errors per page on your site? Longer than 24 hours, right? Yeah, holy cow. And then these guys can do it in 24 hours, and it's $49 a month. Another thing that makes these guys particularly challenging to track down and figure out who's who is that they do a lot of white labeling of their products. And white labeling, if you don't know, is the practice of letting someone else sell your product as though it was their own. So this is from a company, actually, AccessUS.ai is headquartered in Towson, Maryland. There's another one called Accessiway in Italy. That's also Accessible white labeled. So there you go. Now these other guys, the other thing about the lies that they tell you is that they will tell you that they have all these awesome customers who use their product. You see lots of things like the Agilitech Solutions, which is a big government contractor, Argos, Qualitest, Microsoft. Microsoft uses an overlay? No, they do not. This is bullshit because I actually know the Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft. They do not use this product Alliable. And as a matter of fact, one of the things, because I am a Microsoft vendor, that they tell you is you can't use their logo to market yourself. So there you go. Another one they'll tell you is that they have a lot more customers than they actually do. EqualWeb says they are installed on over 100 million websites. And as a matter of fact, my own research, anybody ever heard of a company called BuiltWith, or an API called BuiltWith? So I use BuiltWith to figure out how many websites are actually have this installed on. 6,000. So each of those 6,000 websites would have to have an average of 16,767 pages in order to actually reach their claim of over 100 million pages. Another lie, this one is from a company called Online ADA. And they say that their product Max Access, they imply that they offer a certification. They say certification is the only solution you'll ever need. The problem is there is no independent third party out there certifying websites for accessibility. Not one. This is a screenshot from Purple Lens. Anybody here work in WordPress? Purple Lens is an overlay for WordPress accessibility. They say for a maximum of $16 a month, you will get 100% level A compliance. This is another one from True Abilities. They, like the rest, claim all you need to do is install their little JavaScript snippet. The other thing that I like in particular, and this is just a little spot of humor for me, I guess, is a lot of times you'll see disability representation on their websites, of course, because they want to show you that they are accurately helping people with disabilities. Anybody know anybody who actually uses a wheelchair? Do they have handles on their wheelchair? No. So you always see you'll see the blind guy with the dog, even though fewer than 20% of the people who are blind actually have guide dogs. Or you'll see them with you'll see the ubiquitous blind cane leaning up against the desk, very very obvious and out there. No, most people with canes will fold them up and stick them in their backpack and stuff like that. Or the glasses, like they're all Stevie Wonder. No, most people don't actually use glasses. So they try to say that they're doing this representation when they're really not. Finally, the biggest lie that you will hear from overlay vendors is that they are going to save you from a lawsuit. That is not true. This is as you can see here, this is a LinkedIn comment from a guy named Sheer Eckerling. He's the CEO and co-founder of Accessibility. He says, one note on your comment, you have never, not once, had encountered a company that got sued because of Accessibility. You've only seen companies that have joined Accessibility to be a solution to their already existing legal situation. Bullshit. So this is a screenshot from a legal filing. The complaint is called declaratory injunctive relief. Anthony Hammonds Murphy is the plaintiff. The defendant is iBobs. iBobs sells glasses and contacts. And at the time that was written, the time the previous status on LinkedIn was written, I was employed as the expert witness on behalf of the plaintiff in Murphy versus iBobs. So he was lying as he was in the middle of actually ignoring his customer. The customer said that they did not get any legal help. What we found was Accessibility is unable to correctly address accessibility issues in images and non-text content, unable to correct accessibility issues in forms, unable to correct accessibility issues in document heading structure, unable to address accessibility issues in keyboard navigation, and the accessibility widget itself causes net new accessibility problems. And alluding to this, I mentioned before, they were ignoring their customer. Another lie that they told, they said they will give you litigation support. As a matter of fact, it's a line item on their website. They say we'll give you litigation support, and almost all these vendors will say that, when in fact in the settlement terms from iBobs, they mentioned that Accessibility was non-responsive to requests for assistance. Well, Karl, you say it can't automatically fix stuff, but look at all the really cool tools that they offer. When you activate that little control and the widget pops up, it comes up with all these really cool tools. So this one is, for instance, we see here a button that says adjust for visually impaired. That one's hidden. Adjust for colorblind, hide animations and flashes, typical view, so on and so forth. Big white cursor, big black cursor, so on and so forth. Here's more. This one has a content adjustment that'll change the font size. It'll change the font itself. Emphasize titles, emphasize links, and text magnification. You think, man, this is actually useful stuff. Another one, which is, this one has screen reader adjustments, whatever the hell that is, hide images, keyboard navigation, all those sorts of things. This is great, right? Increasing the font size, if you can't see it, is awesome. Changing the size and color of the cursor is awesome if you can't see it, right? Well, all of that functionality is already built into your computer. Anybody here on Windows? Wow, there's a couple of you. Okay. Your Ease of Access Center has this already. So while this product will change the size of your cursor when you are using that particular website, Microsoft's Ease of Access Center has the ability to change the size of the cursor on every website you use. The same thing goes for changing your fonts. The same thing goes for virtually everything that they do. The other thing that you'll find out is that if you go to use the font adjustment in most of these things, the font size will only go up to 200% magnification, which is the bare minimum for WCAG compliance. But your browser goes up, I don't know, how many times can we hit Control Plus in our browser? You guys have done it, right? Yeah, so they go up 200%. You guys go up the equivalent of about 36% when you just hit Control Plus. Not only does Windows have good accessibility stuff, so does Mac. Mac OS actually allows you to change the size of text much higher and in a much more granular fashion. And because if you need a larger font size, if you need high contrast mode, if you need any of these things that these widgets do, you're going to need it on every website and every application. Anybody use Outlook on desktop or versus Outlook on web? Outlook desktop? If you need it, if you need big font on the web, you're going to need it on Outlook, right? So there you go. So this one, I'm sorry, I said this was Apple. This is Windows 11. Sorry. This is another Ease of Access Center setting for using your magnifier, and of course you have a default zoom level that changes the zoom on everything as well as the increments of the zoom. And those crazy kids that are at Apple are at that again. So this is the macOS accessibility settings. And these are for changing your keyboard and trackpad click speed and spring load delay. So there you go. Well, they also offer special tools for screen readers. They have the screen reader navigation. This is from a tool called MK Sense or Make Sense. Has the screen reader navigation. I have no idea what the hell that does. Oh, I know what it does. It brings up the list of links on the page. Holy shit. That feature is available in JAWS, the most popular screen reader available. So if you're a screen reader user, it has this screen reader navigation. If you're a screen reader user, you already have this tool available to you in JAWS and NVDA, and holy shit, also in VoiceOver that's built into the Mac desktop. VoiceOver allows you to navigate through headings, through lists, through buttons, form controls, all that sort of stuff. Well, Karl, we can also do high contrast mode in one of these cool overlays. Nope. We can do that in our built-in computer as well, and god damn it, Windows does it too. But Karl, it gives you a big-ass cursor. Oh, god damn. Now, what's great about doing this talk, I've only done it twice. I did it on a webinar, and I did it. I was telling Jordan I did it in Germany. And what's great about doing this talk is that you have all these great talks that are inspirational. Jordan's giving you really good information about how to use APIs. We got a kick-ass talk about design systems. We got all these other, and I'm here to piss you guys off. This picture is really grainy, and I apologize for that. It looks way better on my computer. You can all come up because it works on my machine. So this is called the capital crawl. Anybody hear of the capital crawl? Anybody ever hear of a person who recently died this week, Judy Heumann? Okay. So the capital crawl happened on March 13th, 1990. Over 1,000 people marched from the White House to the U.S. Capitol to demand that Congress pass the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. When they got to the stairs of the White House, to the stairs of the Capitol, they ditched their wheelchairs or their crutches or whatever and crawled up the steps and Judy Heumann was with them. It was a physical demonstration of how inaccessible architecture impacts people with disabilities. And it also highlighted the urgency behind the need to pass the ADA. And actually, this is considered a pivotal moment in disability rights because George H.W. Bush signed it into law in 1990. Now, one thing I want to highlight a little bit about this is that it happened in 1990. Anybody know when the Civil Rights Act passed in the United States that prohibited discrimination based on race? 1964. The first law having anything to do whatsoever with disability was 1973. It was the Rehabilitation Act. If you've heard the word Section 508 is literally the 508th section of the Rehabilitation Act. So it took 9 years for the federal government to protect people with disabilities in federal employment. It took until 1990 for people with disabilities to get their civil rights in the private sector. So the problem with overlays isn't that they don't work, okay? Let's face it, shitty products are out there all the time. You know, anybody here work on cars, ever buy anything from Harbor Freight? You know what I'm talking about shitty products. But so there's crappy stuff all the time that just doesn't work, doesn't do what it says. That's not the big deal. The problem with overlays is that when a company buys an overlay and puts it on their site, they quit with accessibility. So they put a product on their site that doesn't really work, and they don't know. Let's face it, customers don't really have the technical knowledge to know these things. They put this product on their site, and they wash their hands of accessibility altogether. And that, in my opinion, is ableism, is the desire to just wash our hands of accessibility and move on to our next problem. So when a vendor, and the reason why is pretty obvious, right? When a vendor tells you you're going to be 100% compliant, why wouldn't you believe them? So this is a problem. There's the people who suffer from this, though. They're not the customer. It's not like the customer is suffering because they bought something that's shitty. It's the people, the end user who is the victim of this whole purchase of the accessibility overlay. Now, you don't have to believe me on any of this stuff. But I would encourage you to go over here to a website called Overlay False Claims. I'm sorry, Overlay Fact Sheet. Where the hell is my cursor? Okay. Overlay Fact Sheet. Overlay Fact Sheet is a fact sheet, as you can see, and this has been signed by 763 people in every continent, other than maybe Antarctica, who have all signed this statement against overlays. 763 people, some of them involved in the very first creation of web standards, back when WCAG was actually the result of work from the Trace Research Center and Digital Equipment Corporation. These are people who have been involved in this for their entire careers. I would heartily recommend that you read through that. And then if you're really interested in this sort of thing, there's also the Overlay False Claims. Which actually itemizes all of the issues. And look at this one here, by the way. Let's see. I think it's an appendix. What I also like is that, remember I mentioned here before that these companies say they'll keep you from being sued. These are all companies that were sued despite having overlays on their website. And then finally, I'll go back to my own website, which is karlgroves.com. A recent blog post that I put on there itemizes the claims that they make around personalization and the fact that they actually don't do anything that they say they're going to do. Now, in full transparency, some of the stuff that they do around text changes and stuff like that is good for readability and dyslexia, and it's kind of crappy that Windows and Mac OS don't do that, but that's really the bulk of the useful stuff. is font changes and line font family changes that they make, as well as line height, letter spacing stuff that they do. So that is it for me. I'm glad to be such a Debbie Downer on the whole conference. I really appreciate the enthusiasm you guys now have for everything I've said. If you want to get in touch with me, I am Karl Groves on literally all the things, and my email address is karl.groves@levelaccess.com. Are there any questions? Yeah.
What's the threshold for getting hit with a lawsuit in terms of accessibility? Like, you have to have no issues, or is it case by case?
So to reiterate the question, he said, what's the threshold for not getting sued? Is it number of issues, or is it something like that? It tends to be a couple of things. It tends to be basically what industries you're in and what size you are. Now, this is all in flux, because I used to say you'd have to be the biggest in your industry, and it would have to be in one of 5 industries, which would be banking, insurance, healthcare, education, travel. That's no longer the case thanks to all these trolls. I've even seen people who have net revenues under $1 million get sued, which is, in my opinion, bullshit. That's just not cool. So in general, though, I would say that if you are at a company with 100 employees or more, you should be considering yourself in the literal top risk category. 100 employees or more, say 10 million in revenue or more, and then almost any industry that has a touch with the public. So if you're in manufacturing or something like that, and your website's just a promotional PR page, probably not. If you take money or if you do anything like that, then all bets are off on the sizes. Anything else? All right, well, thank you all.